I want to stress that more than anything. I have not yet seen a relationship where two people come in truly wanting a close, bonded relationship, regardless of your past, regardless of your family of origin issues, that can't turn a relationship around in a way that has both of you feeling loved and important to each other.
Are you married or in a committed relationship? Looking for real advice on having love and enriching your relationship? You are in the right place. Welcome to The Couples Expert with Stuart Fensterheim.
Hello, this is Stuart Fensterheim, the Couples Expert. Welcome to the Couples Expert podcast. In today's podcast, we'll be talking about how the childhood attachments in your life may be impacting your relationship now. But first, I want to talk about the fact that it's interesting that this podcast will be released on the day that it does, because I will be in Chicago for a wedding where my family is coming together to celebrate the marriage of my nephew. And it's a nephew within the marriage, meaning it's not immediately my biological family, but the family that I married into. There is no other function other than weddings, bar mitzvahs, funerals, that family issues tend to come up at family events. Now, the reason for that is that generally there's a great deal of stress and strife that it comes to putting something like that together. And the interactions that need to occur in your family because of this event tends to have people really relating quite often as they did when they were younger, and many of the dysfunctions of the family surface. It's going to be really interesting to see how these things may play itself out at this wedding. And it relates so nicely to this current podcast, because being in my wife's family will be less of an impact on me and my children, but the relationships throughout the family will have a significant effect on this function, I believe. My hope is that it doesn't occur. I am very interested, though, in seeing how my sister-in-law and her children, because it's her son that's getting married, and how everything sort of plays out. And I get to, at this function at least, stand back and just be a non-participant observer. What we know is that how a child is raised and how our primary caretaker interacted with us, and it doesn't necessarily need to be your mother or father. It could be a grandparent. It could be an uncle. But the person that you were raised with, the person that primarily took care of you, how that attachment needs and whether or not those attachment needs got met have a very big influence on your life, particularly the first few years of your life. And whether we walked away from that experience feeling secure, or did we feel anxious or ambivalent about our needs getting met, really impact who we pick as partners and what happens in that relationship. Our style of attachment really affects everything, from who we pick, who we select as a partner, and how well the relationship is progressing, and what vulnerabilities are in the relationship and what are the strengths. The exciting news is you're not stuck with this, and everything is all modifiable. Now that's real world. So often when I see couples, I hear people talking about that we're stuck and that this is who I've married and therefore there's nothing that we can do about it and the only option is to end the relationship if I'm unhappy. And that's just not the case. I want to stress that more than anything. I have not yet seen a relationship where two people come in truly wanting a close, bonded relationship, regardless of your past, regardless of your family of origin issues, that can't turn a relationship around in a way that has both of you feeling loved and important to each other. What we need to do, though, is develop a relationship that has an attachment model of security, and we'll be talking a lot about this. If there's an anxious or avoiding pattern, though, that we are raised with, and the person that we picked isn't good for us in terms of that model that we need, the relationship very well can suffer. The more aware you are, though, of the importance of this, the more likely that the relationship can be modified to a place where both of you feel like you truly have someone in your life that cares about you, that has your back, and that the needs that you have for a relationship can be met by that one person. The difficulty connecting when you've been raised in different models of attachment need to be clearly stated, however. So basically what we're saying, the attachment style that we were raised in influences what our expectations are. And as I go through some of the different models and the pros and cons of each of them, what I want you to do is take a look at the worksheet that I'm going to attach to my show notes. And as you know, I have show notes for every episode, so you don't have to jot it down. I want you to just pay attention and listen and just really allow yourself to be affected by the information that I'm sharing, and don't put a perspective on it other than focus of your listening. And this will be a good practice of your listening skills. Don't let your mind wander, if possible, to saying, uh-oh, we're in trouble because my partner is this or my partner is that. Listen to it with the intention of this episode. And the intention here is to say, regardless of where you two come from, what your childhood attachments are, knowing the information will help the two of you work as a couple to develop a deep, secure love where both of you know you're with that one person in the world that loves you more than anyone. That's the focus of this podcast. Before I continue the podcast, I do want to remind everybody that I do a series called 3 Minutes with Stuart through my YouTube channel. And you can find it on the Couples Expert YouTube channel. And you can go directly to YouTube. If you want, you can go through the website, which is www.thecouplesexperts.com. And you can subscribe to the YouTube channel and you'll be notified when I do those. And I put out 3 videos, 3-minute videos. That's why I call it 3 Minutes with Stuart. Tools and tips on relationships. And if you'd like, it'd be something you can watch with your partner and the two of you can have ongoing skills because there are specific tools that the two of you could use that would help you keep your relationship strong and connected. Before we continue in terms of the different attachment models, I realize that one of the things I may want to talk a little bit about is exactly what attachments are. An attachment in a relationship is the motivating force throughout your lifespan to maintain a contact, a close contact with a significant other, and that significant person being your caretaker, the person that is raising you and providing all those needs that you have. And it's part of a drive that we have. And what we've recently learned is that it's not something that you outgrow. For many years, we believed that once we reached a certain age, we don't need that any longer. What we now know, and what we have seen through all the research on love and relationships, is that this is part of human beings from the cradle to the grave. We never outgrow this need. John Bowlby, who's a research psychologist, said the dependency in a relationship, and this is a quote, "Dependency is an innate, healthy part of our being and not something we grow out of." And that he discovered in 1988, that we need someone to talk to as much as we need fire and water. If we don't have them, we'll create it. If you remember the movie with Tom Hanks called Castaway, I believe, he developed a volleyball and he created a face in that volleyball because he was going insane because he didn't have someone to relate to. So he created something that he can talk to. Other experiments many years ago were isolation experiments. People went mentally insane not having that. So what we know that we need these like we need the air we breathe. A secure dependency on a significant person complements our autonomy. We feel stronger when we have a secure relationship with someone, and it's an interdependency in a relationship. We feel stronger and we feel more self-assured and more autonomous. We cannot, and this is important, we can't be overly dependent or completely independent. Rather, it's only an effective or ineffective dependency. The more securely dependent we are, the more separate and independent we can be. Now think about that. So what that really means is that these attachments offer a safe haven, and the presence of an attachment figure such as parents or spouses or lovers provides that comfort and security. When we perceive these people to be inaccessible to us, we go into such distress. What we call it is primal panic. This primal panic doesn't allow you to reach for your partner in a secure way. So you panic, and you feel so alone and alienated. When there's a positive attachment, however, it offers a buffer against the effects of stress and uncertainty, and you have this context that you feel so strong because there is a secure attachment. This security and this attachment provides a secure base from which people can explore the world and respond to the environment, whether it's job stress or issues with kids or whatever. This secure base encourages you so that you cognitively are much more open and can get feedback. And basically, this secure base allows you to have a safe attachment with others. And you become much more accessible and responsive, and you can build this secure bond. And therefore, what happens then is that you can have that emotional connection. When we don't have that, we'll take any kind of response. That's the primal panic I was talking about. Any response, even anger, is better than none. No response or no emotional response sends a message that you don't matter, and I don't care whether or not we have a connection, and you're going to live a life alone. This fear and uncertainty does activate that need to be attached, and when we're threatened by things like traumatic events, stress, illness, we don't know how to handle that. We need, not want, need someone that can help us through that. And that's done in a connection between two people who love one another and know that you're there for each other. So taking this understanding, what I want you to do now is let's talk about how we identify whether or not the world is a safe place or unsafe place. We know it comes from our primary caretakers, the people that we were raised with, and that there are three really different models. So let's talk about that now. One of the questions that always come up when I have a couple in my office is really the question of how to connect. And when we talk about connection with our partners, what we're talking about, not just a superficial one, but how do we connect in a deep emotional way? What's exciting now is that we really do know how to do this, but some of what we have to look at is the struggle with that lack of attachment. Without that connection, as I said a moment ago, the world looks like you go into this panicked place and the world looks scary and intimidating. When you feel safe and secure, the world seems okay. And this is really based on the science that we've talked about. So what attachment theorists like John Bowlby have done is we've identified three areas. One is an area of secure attachment, which is really the ideal goal. Then there is an anxious ambivalent attachment and an avoidant attachment. So what I'm going to do is define each one for you and have you understand how it sort of impacts the relationship. In a secure attachment, the best example of that is we think of a baby, and after a few minutes of crying and being upset, what do we typically see parents doing? When the child cries, we try to figure out why. Are they have a wet diaper? Did they just get hurt? And we want the parent to respond quickly and pick the child up if it's crying, or change the diaper. Or if we expand on that a little bit, if a child is sick, get them to the doctor if needed. If a parent or caretaker responds with that by holding a child on a regular basis, what does the child begin to learn? That child begins to say, my needs will be met. When I am upset, my mom or dad is going to hold me and respond to me. When I need something, it will come. If I'm sick, I'll get to the doctor. If I'm unhappy, they'll try to make it so I will be happy. This child begins to believe that their needs will be met. How that then gets played out in a relationship, when something isn't going right and you're upset with each other, a child who has been raised that way has an expectation that the partner will meet their needs, will change behavior in order to make the person happy again. We expect it to happen. When we go into an interaction where we say, I'm upset with you, your expectation is that your partner will say, I'm sorry, what can we do to fix this? And then we'll follow through and do that. Not put you off, not avoid it, but they will be dedicated to changing the nature of the interaction and the feelings that are going along with that. That is someone that expects things to go well. Now, what happens if there's an anxious attachment? That the caretaker growing up was very anxious, that was uncomfortable with the child. When the child's a bit cranky, she doesn't know what to do. She's insecure in how to respond to the child's needs. This creates for the child an anxiousness that can last the entire lifetime. An example of that might be when the child is sick, she doesn't want to bring the child to the doctor because the expectation is the doctor's going to say the child has this awful illness that may be incurable, or feel blamed for not doing something right. That anxiety, that anxiousness doesn't allow the parent or the caretaker to respond in a way that's helpful and has the child feeling secure. The last kind of attachment might be an avoidant attachment. Avoidant attachment is when the mother is very cold and distant. And when I use the term mother, just understand that any caretaker here. A child will learn quickly that their needs not going to be met. When I do an initial assessment in my office, one of the questions I always ask is, who in your life, in your family, could you turn to and say you were upset and know that you can count on something happen? I have numerous couples where I do that. And the answer, which is such a sad answer, is that there was no one. So I said, what did you do with it? When you were unhappy, where would you go? What would you do? They'd say, just deal with it. And more times than not, just have to sit with it and bury it. Think about that. Think about what that says about our world. So a child will quickly learn their needs are not going to be met, no matter what they do. So what we're saying, you have these three different things. We have a secure attachment, avoidant, and we have an anxious attachment. What comes with that in the secure attachment, and that's the key, to attach with one another, you'll be able to negotiate your emotions and able to negotiate through problems. And you'll be able to express yourself emotionally because you know you're not going to lose that person. And that's the fear here. Because if you have someone who has either an anxious or avoidant attachment caretaker, it doesn't allow you to feel like things are going to go well. Now, one of the questions I've asked people, which is an interesting question, and initially I was very surprised by the answer. I said, what do you think people would prefer? To have someone who responds some of the time, but not all of the time, or never responds? Initially, I really believed that people would say, well, I'd like it some of the time, at least I get it some of the time, but that's not been the case. More often than not, people will tell you, I'd rather they never do, because then I don't have to hope for it. Because hoping for it and have it not happen is so painful. What do we need to do when you have a securely attached person with someone who is raised with an avoidant attached or an anxious attached, or couples that are struggling because of the differences? What we as therapists need to do is help you guys have secure experiences, secure attachment experiences, experiences in which you ask for something and it happens, and you have repeated successes at this. The best example of this, and I've talked about it quite a bit, was Kelly Clarkson. Kelly Clarkson was on American Idol last year or the year before, I can't recall now, and she sang a song that she has. And what the song was about is that she had a parent who abandoned her and her current husband. And the two of them have been able to establish a corrective experience because of the successes that they have had in raising their children, that she now is not impacted in the same way as she once was, because her present life is so much better than her past. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make changes and have couples have secure attachment experiences so that as a result of having them, and typically it occurs in my office initially, because outside there are all these triggers that sort of pull them apart. So initially in the office, they can take these experiences, and that's why the model we use is an experiential model, and then bring those to your house, bring those to your home, bring those to the real world, and take those successful interactions home with you, and you begin to have those happen at home as well. So that couples begin to see each other as the person in your world that you know you can count on. And you begin to see each other in a different way. So what we begin to do initially is identify what your attachment need is and what you need from your partner to truly feel secure and provide you with that dependency that we talked about earlier. Now, therapy is not always necessary for that, but having the dialogue about this is. And if you can have this dialogue without a third party present, you can do all of this. But most people can't. And that's really why I've begun to put together, and I do on a fairly regular basis, a couples weekend where we begin to identify all of these things. And we talk about attachment theory, and we talk about how do you have those experiences, and you actually do that in a weekend to where you walk away, you see the issues the same way, and begin to say, I know what I need. I know how to talk and reach for you, and let's do this on our own together. These changes generally are long-lasting. When a person is aware of their attachment needs and are able to talk about it, there's nothing more powerful than that. When you can negotiate between the two of you and you feel closer to one another because you're aware of the needs and you know your partner truly is there to meet that need, imagine what the world begins to look like. It looks like a place where you're not alone. You have someone that truly has your back. And if you can also be vulnerable and authentic with them, you have someone in your life that loves all of you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And together, you can accomplish anything. I wish you well. Take care. Love one another. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.